Hello there. I'm feeling inspired enough, and I feel like it would probably be harder for me to write down the thought that I'm having than it would be even for me to just take out my recorder and start. So it is 9:54 a.m. on Sunday, the 8th of March, 2026, and I'm out here going, I've got a mission today, which any Book of Mormonites will remember that I love days with missions. It puts a little pizzazz on everything. Again, people oftentimes talk about like the Virginia blues out here because Virginia is such a long state to get through that people oftentimes like start to lose motivation. But for me, I'm just thinking about how to describe this thing most charismatically. And for me, just having a little mission, like just simply if I was close enough to a town where I was like, I don't necessarily want to do a 28-mile day, but if I do, I can end it and be 100% assured that I'll have beer. Like, that was in 2022, like my primary goal for any given day, because one of my favorite things to do after a huge effort like this is to reward myself with a carbonated recovery beverage. And, being able to do things like this over and over and over again, like on the Appalachian Trail, and to a lesser degree the bike ride, because again, that was almost so resplendent with access to goodies as if to not even really be a true test of any kind of metal, But so I have a mission today. Shout out to my parents. My parents, I'm guessing probably just my dad, but who knows? Somebody, maybe a couple of somebodies who are related to me are going to come and pick me up today at the trail crossing with US 76. That's at mile 69.3 of the Appalachian Trail. And interestingly, they will take me back to the exact spot that I started from a week ago. And I was kind of doing a little bit of napkin math in my head about like how many miles I've done this week. I mean, roughly speaking, it's definitely no less than 140, which is good, That's a solid number. And again, I feel like I'm not killing myself to do that. I think maybe back in 2022, even at the very beginning of the Pinhoti Trail, I might have been doing something closer to 200 miles a week, which is pretty crazy. Feel free to look it up and correct me, but I certainly hit the ground running and I was very enthusiastic, and there were also a lot of road walks out there, so there was opportunity to walk efficiently for long periods of time. I remember one specifically, the Dalton Road Walk, which, most people who are hikers, they really, really hate road walks, and that one was over 30 miles long just to get through it. That's nothing to say about like where you have to start from, which for me was it was close to 2 miles away, I think, from Dalton proper, and then also where you end. So you don't just cross the finish line at the end of that route and then automatically have a campsite. You also have to walk to find that as well. So I think it was like a 34-mile day or something like that. Road walks. Why am I even talking about that? I don't know. Missions, road walks, long mileage for the week. Yes, we're back on track. So the thought that I was just having, which I was like, dang, this one's it's got some layers to it. But I was listening to a clip that I had ripped clip, if you will, from YouTube of this guy. His YouTube channel is called Ari at Home, and he's like this little, he'll forgive me. Well, how can I describe him? He's just like a little white dude, That's the most charitable way I can think to describe him. And he makes like primarily in his YouTube channel, he walks the streets of New York and he makes extemporaneous hip hop songs, and then he has people who are just on the streets collaborate with like singing, or if they play instruments or any number of things that you can imagine creative, and it's really cool. And I was just listening to one of his things that I ripped, as I mentioned, and I was thinking about human culture and specifically the concept that I believe was coined by Richard Dawkins originally, but of meme evolution. Because, Richard Dawkins, when I was younger, and a very, very staunch atheist, Richard Dawkins was sort of like, the fundamental, like, pillar of, I would say, the atheist movement of the 2010s or whenever that was. Maybe even earlier. I guess it was earlier than that. Wow. Yeah, it must have been, because I started when I was in high school. So, yeah, Richard Dawkins is a founding father of that movement. And so I'm pretty familiar with his oeuvre, if you will. However, not so much so that I would be able to, like, consider myself any kind of Dawkins scholar. But broad strokes, I have a pretty good idea of some of his major contributions to evolutionary biology, and one of them was that he, again, coined the phrase memes, and meme specifically, which is like the genetic, well, no, it's not even, it's the evolutionary capacity for an idea to survive and also multiply, replicate, spread, and so I was just thinking about how, like, it's interesting because on its surface you would see this little white guy, Ari, at home, and you'd be like, there's no way that guy makes, like, really, really cool hip-hop music. But then he does. And so I was just thinking about how, like, culture, all culture, every human culture, every type of, culture basically is just like a story that a society tells itself about its origins and its values, And, historically, cultures emerged just in the same way that, like, unique species inhabit the Galapagos. They emerged because they had a cut-off quality to them from the rest of the world, but they had the same human hardware, asking the same questions, coming up with different stories, right? And so I'm thinking about Richard Dawkins and also capitalism at the same time, because I do believe that from hip-hop music to the emergence of capitalism, these are all cultural memes, societal memes, like deep human community memes that stand the test of time, and similar to, like, physical genetics, it's a paradigm of the survival of the fittest, And so, simply speaking, bad ideas won't last, even if it's a short-term profitability that eventually takes 500 years to come to an end, the truth will out, as they say, And so with Ari, I'm just thinking, it's nice in a modern context, because I don't also think that any specific, this is a controversial statement, but suffice it to say, in the pursuit of believing that humanity is undistinguished from any of the arbitrary ideas, beliefs, or clothing that we put on, I don't think that there is any fundamental difference between any human being alive today and any human being alive in the past. I don't think that there's any reason that you can't connect with, like, ideas of people from the past, even if you weren't a part of their cultural background. I don't see that that's actually a barrier to entry if basically what we're talking about is humans' ability to learn and adapt. And I believe that learning and adapting are certainly two mammalian and, just generally speaking, animal qualities. You have to learn from and adapt to your environment, right? And in this burgeoning age of abundance that we currently live in, people can also pursue their passions, And pursuing passions, it necessarily means that you will have time to actually consume and sort of embody different cultural beliefs from the larger body of humanity, And so, yeah, I really... unless you can explain, I'm a hardcore biologic materialist, right? So I believe that everything comes down to a mechanical explanation that can be logically deduced through, mostly through experimentation, and preferably experimentation that's replicatable. In my own personal experience of life, I can't hold my own experience to that level of rigor. I've tried; it doesn't work. I can't navigate my subjective experience through that, but if we're talking about reality, I try to do that. Hold on, we got a person. kind of forgot what I was talking about, but, suffice it to say, my main point is just that, like, like I'm a biological materialist. Like, I don't think that anything is actually sacred, in the way that we define it, anyway, because I think it's all pretty transferable. Like, there's no reason why, because of, an ideologic, mimetic ability to have an idea reproduce, that a human being, which that's the important part, not the actual ethnic or cultural or other surrounding things, that a human being could learn another cultural element, another cultural way of expression or of investigation or whatever, And so I just think it's cool taking, Richard Dawkins and Ari at Home together and being like, hey, these guys kind of like prove to me, to my satisfaction, that I feel like I want to go as far as to say that, I'm trying to think how to say this charitably. I think that you do more harm than good when you revere a specific type of human culture as distinctly better than another. I think that even if you're revering the culture, so like take for instance Native Americans, I feel like a lot of people revere their culture for some very, very amorphous and intangible way. And I assume that that's because of like the idea of Native Americans being more so, or I should say maybe less so civilized. And there's just that general idea that they were in harmony with their environment, which I highly doubt they actually were. I know at a minimum they fought a lot, just like all humans do. And I gotta think that if they were existing in the natural world, they were probably encountering a lot of difficulties as a direct result of that. Case in point, it rained really hard last night, and it did actually thunder for a little bit. It was very, very brief. The fear-mongering was very much so over-reported. But yeah, I just feel like the more important thing to do is to realize that every human being is just a vessel that it was able to learn something and adapt to something. And all of the human skills, any of them are transferable. One group doesn't own any specific thing because it's not because of where they're from that they were able to create this thing. It's because of what they are, which is a human being. But, that's another thing, like with AI in general, like those kinds of things these are the kind of questions I feel like I've had to start confronting myself with, or not even really starting. It's not an active process, actually. It just kind of bubbles up from the surface, or to the surface rather, that's why I enjoy going on walks like this, because the environment that I'm moving through and the music that I'm listening to, in combination, it's like a very potent stimulant, but not like in the sense that it like increases, well, I guess it does increase your heart rate. So maybe it's actually more like a stimulant than I'd give it credit for. But yeah, I described it as like a severe profusion of oxygenated blood to the brain when I was on the Trex podcast. I was like, I think that's what I enjoy. It's like this crazy amount of like creative endorphins, and it certainly is punctuated with a lot of pain. But that kind of, you kind of have to have that. Otherwise, I mean, you just be walking on clouds, my dude. And I don't mean the shoes. But yeah, that was the general thought that I was having. And I was like, how am I going to write this down so that I can ever remember this? And then I was like, well, I feel inspired enough. I feel like, the terrain is gentle enough. I can probably make this work. And so here I am. What is it, 15 minutes later? 14 minutes later? Ugh, this is some gross stuff. I'm hiking in sandals and socks today. I could actually get some water from here. I'm not really thirsty per se. And this water looks, let's skip it. Skip. Skip. Shout out to my parents. Yeah, so chronology. Yesterday was pretty cool. I did want to set myself up so that this morning I would be at a campsite that was not like egregiously far from the rendezvous point with my parents. And so I ended up managing to do a 20-mile day, which was a little surprising to me because if this had been any other stretch of the trail, I probably would have had an earlier day just to make it more convenient. I could have camped closer to water and I don't know, just had more time to relax. I don't really feel like I robbed myself of any of that, but it certainly was a different experience last night. But yeah, so after leaving Mountain Crossings and seeing the Pouty Man, there's a detail about the Pouty Man that I'd like to also add here. I don't think that it excuses him completely, but it is a detail that I forgot to mention because it explains why he didn't have a charging cable. But this guy who was all bent out of shape, as far as I understood, he had come from Colorado, and while he was at a bus stop, someone stole his backpack and all of his belongings. And the other guy who this poor unfortunate Pouty Man was with, that guy, he had helped the guy from Colorado get some more gear and all that kind of stuff. So I guess they were a little bit more joined at the hip than I'm giving them credit for. I mean, I'm not really trying to disparage the guy. It was interesting because I was like, dude, I am so totally not in that headspace, and God bless you, but it's a little offensive. So that's really the only thing that I mean to take a look at when I'm observing his behavior, because again, I'm not trying to moralize, but I did observe, and boy did he present. It's like, well, I mean, I got to do something with this information because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, yes, shortly after that clip yesterday, I basically just kind of put not even the pedal to the metal, but it was just like a very focused rest of the day because I had left so late. It was like nearly 1 p.m. when I started my clip yesterday, and I had only just left before that. So I was a little unsure about like what my progress would be. But yeah, the terrain was gentle enough, and in fact went through some very cool areas that I have absolutely no memory of. And for the record, I'm approaching Unicoi Gap right now. So if you happen to hear traffic in the background, that's what that is. And if memory serves, the other side of Unicoi Gap that I'm about to have to go right back up is very steep. But I also kind of remember that being like a somewhat hot day, so maybe I won't even notice. We'll see. That is an interesting part of the trail. If you do it multiple times, or even certain sections multiple times, you develop like an expectation of what that area is like that's directly related to the weather that you experienced it in. So you can kind of have like grudges against certain areas that like really sucked. But then, if you were to have seen them on a nice day, it might not have ever, tipped your radar at all. Anyway, let's see, trying to navigate the best way. So yeah, pretty much a heads down affair. I had, when I left Mountain Crossings, I guess I had 16 and a half miles to do. I didn't really know that at the time. I think that probably would have been pretty disempowering to know all at once, but that was what it ended up being to get to the campsite that I was at. And along the way, because it was a weekend, Saturday, there was actually a little bit of trail magic, which was very nice. I don't remember the name of the church, but kudos to those who were there and brought us all the stuff that they did. That was very nice. And also, for me personally, going back to my block philosophy of nutrition, having eaten a bunch of unexpected food, I was like, well, I actually don't even care how far this campsite that I'm aiming for is now, because like I have so many calories, I got so many blocks of nutrition, like it would be a true shame to not enjoy them and put them to direct and immediate use. And so I did. I think from that point it was like 9 miles to where I eventually ended up camping. What's that noise? Did we got hikers or did we got stuff? It looks like hikers. How long have I been talking? 19 minutes? This might be a shorty. But yeah, that was great. I ended up making it to a campsite just like right off the trail, which was good. It was a dry campsite, so I didn't have any water, but that was fine. I had like quarter of a liter maybe for coffee this morning and a quick swig before hitting the road. So I didn't suffer for it. And I walked 2 miles this morning after getting up and getting out around 8:30. The time just changed, so that changes things as well. And yeah, I'm headed towards Unicoi Gap, and do got a hiker in front of me, so I think I'm gonna leave it there for now. I think I got the bulk of the important stuff out of my mind for the moment, and anything else I can always just make list notes. So for now, I'm looking forward to my evening, because it's gonna have all the goodies, and I appreciate my parents for coming out to pick me up and make that happen. And yeah, I'll get back to you soon enough. Love you, bye.